It was wedding day. The rancher, a man hardened by years of dust, sweat, and long nights under the stars, rode slowly into town. His horse trotted carefully down the dirt road as children ran past, tossing flower petals into the air. He wasn't one for crowds or music, but he respected tradition and he respected the bride's family, who had once helped him when times were tough. For them, he would show his face, tip his hat, and share in their joy. The hall was decorated with white ribbons, lanterns swinging from wooden beams, and long tables lined with food, roasted meats, biscuits, pies, and cider barrels. The townsfolk laughed and clapped, women in bright dresses fanning themselves while men adjusted their ties and polished boots. The rancher leaned quietly against a support beam, arms crossed, surveying the celebration. He smiled faintly as the bride walked down the aisle, her gown glowing in the candlelight. Applause thundered when the vows were spoken, when the rings exchanged hands, and when the kiss sealed the moment. But while the crowd's eyes were fixed on the happy couple, the rancher's gaze sharpened. Something felt wrong. Years of guarding cattle from rustlers, watching horizons for danger, had given him instincts that rarely failed. And then he saw him. A man in a dark coat, face partly shadowed beneath his hat brim, moved differently than the rest. While the crowd leaned forward to cheer, he leaned back, scanning every corner of the room. His eyes weren't filled with joy. They were locked on the table stacked with gifts. Silver coins, heirloom watches, hand-carved jewelry boxes, even a pouch of gold. The rancher's jaw tightened. He followed the stranger with his eyes as the music swelled and the dance floor filled. The man slid through the crowd like a snake, inching closer to the table. Finally, the rancher stepped away from the beam. His spurs clicked against the wooden floor. He moved slow, steady, not drawing attention, but ready for whatever came next. The robber reached the table. His hand darted forward toward a velvet box. "Fine evenin', ain't it?" The rancher's voice cut through the music, low and firm. The man froze. His hand hovered over the gifts before slowly curling back into a fist. He turned his head, eyes narrowing, sizing up the rancher. "Just admirin'," he said, but his tone carried a hidden edge. The rancher's stare didn't waver. "Funny. Folks admire the bride, the groom, the dancing. You admire in something else entirely." The room's laughter masked their words, but tension sparked between them like flint to steel. The robber shifted his weight, his right hand sliding into his coat, and then steel flashed. The knife gleamed under the lantern light as the robber lunged. Screams burst from the crowd. The music cut off. The bride gasped, clutching her gown, while the groom shielded her with his arm. Guests scrambled, tables overturned, cider spilled across the floor, but the rancher had seen faster blades on the trail. He snatched up a chair and swung it hard, the wood cracking against the robber's wrist. The knife clattered across the floor. The two men collided, fists flying, boots pounding. Dust kicked up as they crashed against the tables, scattering food and gifts. The robber threw a wild punch, but the rancher caught it, twisting his arm behind his back and slamming him into the ground. The crowd circled, watching what did. Some shouted for the sheriff, others cheered for the rancher. But the robber wasn't finished. With a growl, he shoved back, knocking the rancher off balance, and lunged for the fallen knife. The rancher dove, tackling him just in time. They rolled across the floor, chairs breaking beneath their weight. At the last second, the rancher pinned him flat, pressing his forearm against the outlaw's throat. "Not today," he growled. At that moment, the sheriff burst through the double doors, deputies at his side. They rushed forward, shackling the robber, yanking him to his feet. The outlaw spat curses, but he was beaten, dragged out into the night. The hall erupted with cheers. Men clapped the rancher's back, women cried out thanks, and the bride herself pressed his rough hand in gratitude. "You saved our wedding?" she whispered, her voice trembling with relief. The rancher tipped his hat, eyes soft, but voice steady. "Just doing what needed doing." As the music cautiously began again and the laughter returned, the rancher stepped outside. The night was cool, the stars endless. He mounted his horse, gave the reins a light tug, and rode back toward the open range. Behind him, the celebration roared. Ahead, only the quiet of the prairie waited, but that was enough. For a rancher, peace was always found in the saddle and in the knowledge that justice had been done.